Hey there, and welcome to another episode of JavaScript Jabber. This week, I'm your host, Charles Max Wood. We're literally less than a week away from Christmas. I think everybody's just kind of out and about. This is something that I've been kind of noodling over for Command Your Career. I can't remember what I called the new show. Anyway, Command Your Coding Career, that's what I called it. And yeah, it's... I'm getting ready to launch that. I've been kind of noodling over what I want to talk about, as we get going. And we're kind of heading into next year. And I thought, I get a lot of people asking me, hey, how do I stay current? Or what do I learn? Or, people come and tell me they're not happy where they're at. I don't feel like I'm growing. I don't feel like I'm paid enough. And the thing that I run into often is that, A, they're not doing kind of regular practice or regular things that make you grow, stuff like that. And so what I really wanted to jump in on, and as I talk to people about the top-end devs Trailblazer method, typically what I'm talking to people about is, hey, are you learning something new every day? Are you committing code every day? Are you meeting somebody new every week? Are you posting content every week? Are you going to a meetup every month? Are you attending a conference at least once a year? And the last one, and this is the one that kind of enables everything else, and that is, are you planning ahead so that you can be moving ahead in your career? And as I get into this and I start having the conversation with people, people understand, hey, I can spend 10 minutes and I'll listen to something on the podcast and I'll learn something, right? Or I'll go watch a video on YouTube and I'll learn something. I'll read something out of a book and I'll learn something. I'll try something new and I'll commit code, and I can commit code every day to kind of cement what I'm learning, right? People get it, right? You talk about meeting people and writing content or recording content. And people get it, right? They understand the benefits of those things, right? Some people are a little more comfortable with some of it than others. But at the end of the day, they understand those things. But what they don't get is that you have to be deliberate in doing those things in order to advance your career, in order to be moving forward. And so what I want to talk about today is just how to plan things out so that you get that done. And it's interesting because I have a system for this. I've kind of been adapting it lately, and I have a new tool that I've been using that I am loving. And so I'm going to talk about that. But at the end of the day, yeah, how do you make sure you're getting these things done so that you're getting the benefit of what you're doing? And for those of you who are watching the video, I just turned the light on. And anyway, so let's talk about this for a minute, right? Let's talk about it. So you're in this position, right? It's like, okay, I get it. Learn something new every day. Well, I mean, there are two questions, right? When do I do it? And what do I learn, right? Those are the two questions. And so the first thing I tell people is figure out a time, right? I mean, you can look at your calendar, and it doesn't even have to be the same time every day, right? But look at your calendar and when are you going to do it, right? And put it on your calendar and don't miss it, right? If somebody wants to schedule something for that time, tell them no. And it's funny because people are like, well, I can just move it around. Yeah, but my experience is when I have to move it, a lot of the times that means that I won't do it. And so, yeah, sit down and figure out when you're going to do it every day this week, right? And if you can do it on a recurring basis, put a recurring event in your calendar, make sure you're doing it, right? And that way, and it can be 10 minutes, right? I mean, you can pick up a book and read it for 10 minutes. You can go watch a tutorial on YouTube for 10 minutes, right? You can listen to the podcast for 10 minutes, right? And then just keep track. Okay, I learned this from the podcast, right? And I don't feel like I'm setting the bar too high, but if you're learning something that will meaningfully change the direction of your career, or make you just a little bit more efficient even, right? A little bit better programmer, that's going to translate into large change over a long period of time. So figure it out. Figure out exactly when you're going to do this, right? The same for all the other stuff, right? I'm going to learn for 10 minutes. I'm going to go and write some code and commit it, right? And that'll take me 10 minutes, right? You're done. You're done with your daily tasks, right? Just do it first thing. Then it's okay. Well, I'm going to meet somebody. So just go on LinkedIn and reach out to people for 5 or 10 minutes, right? Now we're talking a half hour of your day. No big deal, right? The content may take a little bit more time, but honestly, what I found is that if I do about half and half of activity where, I can just talk about it off the top of my head, And the longer I do this, the more stuff I can talk about off the top of my head. And you can even talk about the stuff you learned, right? And so you've already done the prep. You just, put out a podcast. I did my 10 minutes of learning every day this week, spent it all on this particular topic, and I'm ready to cover it, right? So it doesn't have to take a ton of time, but at the end of the day, if you plan ahead, you're going to get it done. Now, what do you learn? Like, this is the other thing, and this is where a lot of people get stuck, right? Because it's like there's so much going on, right? There's a new framework out there that I want to learn. I mean, I just barely talked to Mishko Hevery, right? He created Angular, now he's created Quick.io, and so maybe you want to go pick up Quick, right? It's like, well, it's cool, right? And yeah, I may not use it at work, but I may learn something new from it, right? And so I want to go learn Quick. So, but then there's all the build tools and the like Docker and all the Docker stuff. And, I could learn more about VS Code. And I could sit here and I could probably list off the top of my head about 25 categories of things that you could go learn that would benefit you in some way. And not all of them are technical like I listed. I mean, it may be, I'm going to go research ways to talk my boss out of having so many meetings. In fact, I need to do that because crazy. Anyway, and then they keep rescheduling. Anyway, I'm not going to go into it. But, so there may be different areas of this that you need to dive into, right? There may be, if you're going to do a podcast for your content, maybe some of that's going to come into it too, right? So how do I record the podcast? How do I post it? And where do I post it, right? So all this stuff, right, that you could be learning. So how do you learn it? Well, that's kind of this higher level thing, right? Is let's back up a little bit higher, right? So now we've got the daily learning, and the daily learning is going to play into kind of the longer term learning, right? And the same thing for everything else, right? For the, for your content, for all the other things you're doing, right? It's okay, longer term, what am I building toward, right? Do I want to be a quick developer? Do I want to be a well-known developer, right? Do I want to be speaking at the conferences? Do I want to, right? All of these things kind of come into play, but now we're talking about things that are way further down the line, right? So you may be able to get a bid speaking at a conference today. I mean, who knows, right? But let's say for the sake of example, you've never done it before and you're thinking, gee, it'd be real nice to, be recognized and be able to talk to people out there in the community and have conversations that I just don't get here at work, or that I don't get on a regular basis because I don't live in a tech hub or something like that, right? And so what do I do? So this is where we kind of take the view and we move it all the way out, right? And so just to give you an example, when I was a new developer, like brand new, I wanted to be a senior developer, right? And then I kind of had this really long term, I don't even know when or how idea that I wanted to be a CTO of a startup, right? And so from there, I can kind of back it up. If I want to be a CTO, that means that I need to be on the management track, right? For being a developer. I probably also need to be capable enough to be a senior developer. Now, that's not always the case, but let's say for the sake of argument that's the way it is. And I had people around me that I could talk to, right? Because I worked with senior developers. I worked with, people who were CTOs at a startup I worked with, right? I went to the meetups and met some of them there, right? And so at the end of the day, I had people I could talk to and kind of figure out what that path looks like. So anyway, as I had these conversations, I could kind of figure out what that path is, right? And so maybe the first things that you're learning are just what are the steps, right? But the steps to becoming a senior developer were pretty obvious to me, right? I also thought, oh, I want to speak at conferences and I want to contribute to open source and I want to be involved in all these other things, right? And so as I kind of listed those out, and I recommend that you'd sit down and list them out, right? I want to be a speaker. I want to be a podcaster. I want to be a team lead. I want to be a senior developer. I want to be a CTO someday. I want to start my own startup. I want to be well known for this, that, or the other. Or maybe it's I want to make enough so that I can go buy a house on the beach, right? I mean, whatever, right? And then there's no wrong answer here. Just be honest with yourself about where you want to go and write it down. Because from there, you can actually start to, backfill the rest of the steps, right? So if you want to buy a house on the beach, right? Now you're talking finances, right? Well, I need to make this much money and I need to cut my expenses by this much so that I can save up enough money in 5 years to put the down payment down, or 3 years, or 2 years, or 1 year, or however, right? Figure it out. And then from there, and I need to be making this amount of money to be able to afford the mortgage, right? And so, you're going to go do some research. This is what beach houses cost. This is what I have to do, right? I want to be a CTO. Okay, well, what's the common path to becoming a CTO? Well, the common path is they get hired up from being a director of engineering, right? So what do I have to do to become a director of engineering? Well, typically I have to become a team lead, and then I have to get promoted up 1 or 2 levels, right? Or I have to get hired on as the tech expert for a startup, right? And be willing to take that risk. So I need to be financially free enough to be able to do it, right? I want to create a JavaScript library that everybody's going to use, right? Okay, well, how do I start identifying problems that everybody has? And how do I start getting the word out about my project so that people will pick it up, right? So these are all the things that start, percolating as far as like, you know, what do I have to learn, right? And you are going to pick it up drip, drip, drip by drip, 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 right? That's why I like the phrase percolating, right? So if you've had something that makes tea or coffee or anything else, right, and it just kind of percolates through, that's the idea. That's the plan. Is okay. What am I going to drip, 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 drip in every day, and how am I going to build the habits and skills that I need to ultimately achieve my goal, right? And so, nowadays my goals are much more on the front of I want to create a system that helps, and I have a pretty specific number in mind of developers achieve their goals and their dreams as far as their career goes, right? And have a career that supports the lifestyle that they want to have, right? Which is the other side of things, right? And so we're talking about, sure, we're talking about technology and we're talking about soft skills. We're also talking about, hey, how much do I need to put into retirement so that I can live the lifestyle I want to live 50 years down the road, right? And we're talking about how do I write a book so that I can, get whatever fulfillment I want from that, whether it's royalties or notoriety or something else, right? Maybe a book is just a way of getting in the door so people know who I am, so I can be speaking at the conferences, right? But all these things kind of click around until you get to the point where it's giving you what you want, right? So let's just be thinking about these pieces a little bit and figuring out what that is. But as you kind of figure out how that looks, and maybe you don't have a good time frame for CTO-ish stuff, right? It's like I don't know exactly when that opportunity is going to come my way, right? But there are things I can do right now to start building those opportunities and building those skills, right? So if I'm going to be well on my way to becoming that CTO, if I'm going to be well on my way to becoming that influencer, if I'm going to be well on my way to building a platform that helps developers build the career and life of their dreams, and become that top 1% of developers, what do I have to do, right? What kinds of things do I need to be opening up in order to do that, right? I also have some revenue goals for top end devs, right? So that I can do that on a more full-time basis, and so that I can hire people to help me do it, right? Because if I can hire people to help me do it, I get there faster, I can help more people, right? If I make more money, then I have more freedom to pursue the different areas that I feel like benefit people, right? And so all of these things kind of come together for that kind of a thing, right? So if that's the goal, then what's a reasonable year's reach, right? To get there, right? And I like to stretch the year goals, because what I found, and I think there's a quote out there, somebody said it. In fact, maybe I'll Google it while I talk through this. But people, I think the quote goes something like, people overestimate what they can accomplish in a day, and they underestimate what they can do in a year. Yeah, it's Bill Gates. Okay. So he says most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Okay. So what I found is that I tend to underestimate what I can even do in a year, right? but in a month or a week, I'm usually like way more optimistic than is realistic, right? And so over a month or 2 months or 3 months, I'll promise stuff that I cannot deliver, right? And I've gotten much, much better at that, and just saying, okay, look, I'm focused on this one thing, and given the progress I'm making on it, it's reasonable to expect that I'll be done at this point. And so then I just give people a time range, right? This point plus 20%, right? And so it's like, okay, so I expect that I will be done, within this time frame, and then I deliver, right? And so that's something that I had to learn. But um, the thing is at the end of the day, what we're talking about is we're talking about this ability to plan ahead. And the other thing I just want to point out, because I'm going to back up just a sec, because I often get the objection from people as I talk about this kind of planning. The objection is, well, I don't even know what the world's going to look like, right, in 5 years or 10 years when I finally get around to being a CTO or writing open source software or whatever else, right? And so I don't even know if I can plan that far ahead. And what I tell people is and this is something I picked up from agile development, right? And is the idea that you're never going to know as little as you know right now, right? You're always going to know more as you go down the road, right? And so what I tell people is start marching that way, right? Start heading toward being a CTO, right? Start heading toward being a speaker. Start heading toward being a podcaster or a YouTuber. Start heading toward writing open source software that everybody in the world is going to use. Start heading right, start moving in that direction, because at the end of the day, let's say that I decide I want to be the open source guru, right? And so, my thinking is 5 years down the road, there's going to be some problem, and I'm going to be smart enough to see it first and to solve it first, right? And so then I'll be the person that everybody goes to for the thing, whatever it is, right? It doesn't even have to be technology that we use right now, right? It may be AI, it may be blockchain, it may be some other thing that kind of is halfway between buzzword and useful, right? But at the end of the day, it may be something else, right? We may get to the point where it's a completely different thing. But what we're looking at is okay, I'm going to head down that road. And then let's say that, you get a year or two in, you're working on open source. I actually have a friend of mine that this happened to, right? And people decided they didn't like some aspects of what he built. And so they started criticizing him for it, right? And so you get a year or two down the road, you've poured your heart and soul into something, and you decide, you know what, this just isn't worth it, right? Do you think all that stuff doesn't transfer to something else, right? Wow, I built successful open source and I decided I didn't like the criticism. But I learned all this stuff about building software, about getting feedback on software, about open source, about how it's used, about how it goes together. I bet if I did a paid product, I might have better luck. And then I can hire somebody to deal with all the garbage that I didn't like about open source, right? So you pivot. Or, maybe you learn some things about managing a project that you can apply to, running a team and being a CTO, or, so it all transfers, right? And it makes you more marketable anyway for that position you ultimately want, right? Maybe you learn some stuff from running an open source project and dealing with people, that developer evangelism is really attractive to you, right? Because now you don't have to deal with any blowback or BS, right? But you know how to talk to people about software and how to get them to want to use it, because that's what you had to do to grow your open source movement. And so anyway, what I'm saying is if you have a long-term goal and you've written it down and it turns out that doesn't align anymore with where you want to go, change it, right? It's that simple. Change it. You've learned a whole bunch of stuff that will apply to that other thing. Just change it, right? And just move ahead in the new direction, right? Don't change it very often, right? But when you know that the ultimate long-term goal for where you want to end up isn't where you want to go anymore, change it, right? And so, I mean, that's what I did. In fact, let me tell you a little about that, okay? So, I had this long-term vision that I wanted to create the biggest, baddest, awesomest podcast network in the world for developers, right? And a lot of it really boiled down to because I wanted to be famous. I mean, being brutally honest, right? I mean, I love talking to people. I love helping people. I get a lot of fulfillment out of that. But at the end of the day, my core driver at the time was I want to be famous. I want people to like me. I want to be well known. And then I got in a beef with a bunch of people on the internet. And I still maintain that a lot of it wasn't my fault. But at the end of the day, they came in and they chased my sponsors away. They, tried to destroy my reputation. We had a whole bunch of stuff happen. Right. And so all of a sudden, I wanted to be liked and well known. Well, I was sure well known, but a lot of the people that knew me didn't like me anymore. And I went through, and I was, I had a lot of my identity tied up in having a successful podcast network and knowing all the people and everything else, right? And so I kind of had to go through this time period. I got really depressed, and I thought, well, I'll just fight my way back. And I fought my way back a little bit, and then COVID hit, and everybody said we can't sponsor podcasts right now. And I mean that really really set me back, right? And so all of a sudden, the person that I thought I was and the person I thought I was going to be didn't feel like they were options anymore, and it really hurt. And I went through this whole process of well, man, I can't be the thing, and I can't do the thing, and there are all these reasons why it's not working, and I went and got a full-time job at Morgan Stanley, and that sucked. And but I ground through that, and I was able to pay the bills for the family and do the stuff that I needed to do. And then finally, about a year ago, I started really thinking about it. And I'd had this idea when I was newer, right? Before I kind of got caught up in all the, hey, Chuck is the awesomest guy doing podcasts about programming ever. I remembered that I really did want to help people, and that I really did want to kind of create that space for people to come and get what they needed. And so I pivoted, right? Because I kept trying to build the podcast network back to where it was so that I could just go back to being me, I guess. And what I figured out was that no, that's not what I want to be anymore, right? I want to be the guy that people basically, even in their private thoughts, think, boy, I wouldn't be where I was today if it weren't for something that Chuck did, right? Now, I don't need testimonials. I don't need people calling me up and telling me how awesome I am, right? I don't need flowing rainbows coming off of my head, right? It doesn't matter, right? What matters is that I'm having that impact on people. And I ultimately also want to change the programming community so that people can take control of the kind of life they're going to lead, right? And that they don't feel so beholden to companies that they can't stay or they can't leave, or that they feel like they don't have any control of their destiny or things like that. Whenever somebody says I'm stuck these days, it hurts. It hurts me, right? Because they have this skill and these opportunities that just offer them so much, and there's no reason for them to feel like they're stuck, right? Even with a lot of these big companies laying people off, I know so many companies that are just dying to hire somebody with a high level of talent who they can work with, who will get stuff done. And so I really feel like most people really do have opportunities if they're willing to go out there and hunt them down. And so that's why I started building Top End Devs, right? And so, yeah, I kind of came back around to the podcast because that's where I was. But now we're doing online meetups, and we're doing, in the membership, we're doing the book club. That's also a membership or part of the main membership, right? We're putting together online conferences and things like that. And I'm hoping that all of this stuff will provide people with the opportunities that they need to be able to go out and interact with the community. And so, I'm doing some other stuff, and I'm trying to pull these resources together so that and teach you how to continue to grow so that you can put yourself in a position to where you can have what you want, right? And so then it's okay, well, Elon Musk took over Twitter and I don't like Elon Musk. I'm not commenting at all on the situation at Twitter. I'm just saying it seems like there are people who are in this position, right? Well, I want you to be in a position then to where you can say, well, then I'm not going to work here for Elon Musk. I'm going to go somewhere else, right? Some other big company laid me off. And so, but that's fine. I'll land on my feet here in a week, right? Because I know people, and I have skills, and I have what it takes to get what I want. I'm tired of working for an employer. I got there, right? I think I might want to go freelance. Okay, well, let's enable you to go freelance and have the freedom you think you want. And then you can figure out if that's a good fit for you or not. And I find that a lot of people, they figure out whether or not something's a good fit for them after they try it, right? It's the same thing with a job, right? People go work at a job for a month or two. They get past the honeymoon period and they figure out that this is not the place for me, but the guy in the next cube over loves it, right? And so, you figure it out and then you change. So that's what I'm driving at, right? So I figured out that I wanted to show people that, hey, look, this is your career, it's your life, make of it what you want, right? You're going to have to work, but if you do the work, you can have what you want. Okay. So that was the pivot for me, right? And so it can be a pivot for you too. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to plan it out. So I'm looking at things and I'm going, where do I want to be at the end of 2023, right? Because right now is the end of 2022, and I didn't plan at the end of 2021, and I've kind of been planning a quarter at a time, which is kind of what I still do. But I kind of picked this up in June again, and I'd done it before, but I've gotten really, really specific on the way that I'm approaching things for quarter to quarter. So I'm looking at things and I'm thinking, okay, where am I going to be in a year, right? And ultimately, where I want to be in a year is I want to have helped hundreds of developers take control of their career, right? And I want to have helped hundreds of developers move from maybe the top 50% to the top 20%, or the top 20% to the top 5%, or the top 5% to the top 1%, or from the top 1% to just, the elite of the elite of the elite of the elite, right? And so I want to help you build the practices that are going to get you there. And that essentially, like I said, is down to consistent learning, meeting new people, having conversations, and growing to the point where you are the person that can do what you need to do. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be in the limelight, but I do find that there's a certain level of value in putting yourself out there and offering something back to the community. And so that's what I'm pushing for is that kind of option to allow you to grow. So for me, right, I'm looking at, I want to have reached, I want to have impacted hundreds of developers in the way that they take control of their career and move up, right? I want to be making enough money from the either podcast sponsorships, coaching, membership, things like that. I want to be making enough from that to be able to completely support my lifestyle. I want to hire a couple more people by the end of next year, right? So that I can help provide that. And I want to provide opportunities for other developers to come in and advance their career by building content for top end devs, right? Some of it paid, some of it free, right? And so those are the things that I'm looking at. And I've got some more specifics under each of those things, but that's what I'm looking at there, right? And then I want to be able to so my oldest son, a year from May 2023, so May 2024, is likely going to go on a mission for my church, right? I want to be able to pay for all of that, right? I want to have the money saved up, right? If he wants to go to college, I want to be able to pay for that, right? And so those are things that I'm kind of looking at that are slightly longer term than a year, but are things that I need to be acting on within the year, right? And so I've got those kinds of things figured out, right? I want to be able to take a trip with every single one of my kids at least once within the next year, right? I haven't told them that, but it'd be fun to just say, hey, you need to pack for 3 nights. We're going, and then when we get on the airplane and fly to Anaheim or fly to Orlando and go to Disneyland or Disney World, right? Just have them go, whoa, and then the next kid, right? Same deal, right? One of my daughters is so into Harry Potter, it's a little bit ridiculous, right? So, we go hit Universal Studios, right? But you get the idea, right? And so those are some things that I'm putting together that aren't really have anything to do with my career, except that I need to be able to pay for them. And so, just figuring those things out, right? There are some people I owe some money to that I need to pay back, right? And so, paying all that off within the next year. So you get the idea, right? And I've got this all listed out of stuff that I want to do. And I recommend that you sit down and you write it out. Okay. And then the next thing you do, I've been doing is just kind of putting in kind of the milestones for it, right? So, with paying people back, it's real easy. I paid them $1,000, paid them another $1,000, right? Till I've got them paid off. Or, um, bringing people into the memberships, right? So I'm thinking, okay, well, how am I going to market this, right? So it's, how do I get people on the email list? How do I get people to listen to the podcast? How do I move people from the from the mailing list and the podcast to, and so just making a plan for that, right? And then I just break it down further, just like we do for a lot of our programming tasks, right? It's, hey, I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do this. The only difference is I can't write a test and know if it's working other than delivering it and seeing who picks it up on the other end. But at the end of the day, those are the kinds of things that I'm doing. So at the end of the year, I've got some pretty specific things. I may post it, I may not. I don't know. One system that I'm using for this is called linear.app. And so for those big goals for the year, I'm creating a project for each of those in Linear. And then from there, I may break it out into multiple projects, right? So the marketing, I may have a newsletter project and I may have a podcast project, right? We use a different task management system for the actual episodes for the podcast, but for some of these other things, that's what I'm doing. And just kind of having that in there and being able to kind of populate a lot of that stuff gives me an idea of how much work I have to get done. Okay. So once you have your yearly plan, right? Once you kind of know what you've got to get done this year, then what I do is I start breaking it out and saying, okay, well, where do I need to be on track for the next quarter, right? For the next 3 months. So at the end of March, where am I going to end up, right? Where do I want to be? And I've been using another tool for that, and that is, and if you're looking at the video, I'm holding it up, but it's called the Full Focus Planner, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But essentially what it is it's a planner, and I'm going to walk through some of it and describe what I'm looking at. But the way that it works is it's each planner is a quarterly planner. It's not a yearly planner. And that's important for a few reasons. One is that I have a hard time seeing specifics a year out. I just do, right? In fact, I don't know anybody who's really, really good at it, right? But I can get my head around 3 months. And then if I have something that, so for example, we're putting together the online conferences, right? And so I have one scheduled in January, one in February, and one in March, right? But I need to be doing work towards the one that's in April and May, right? Now. And so, I'll have those on my radar. I'll have them on the schedule. But I'm going to be doing the same kinds of things for the other conferences that I'm doing now. And so I can see those specifics in my head because I can just lift them and transfer them to the other one, right? Podcast delivery, right? It's something we do on a routine basis. And so I don't have to think a ton about it. I'm launching the Control Your Coding Career, right? Podcast. And so, yeah, launching a podcast takes a little bit of work. And then, it just kind of goes along with delivery for everything else. And as long as I have the recording in my calendar to do the scheduling, right, and I'm thinking ahead as far as what's coming up and how do I market it through the podcast, then I'm in good shape, right? And so it's that kind of stuff that is mostly routine or something that I've done a lot of times. But at the same time, I also anticipate that as we get more members of Top End Devs membership, right, or as we get um, maybe as I fill up the coaching groups, right, I'm going to run into things that I haven't run into before. And so I'm going to have to compensate for some of those, right? So that's kind of the place that I'm living at in these days, right? As far as planning that out, right? And so I'm not going to plan out I need to account for having so many people in the coaching plans 8 months in because I don't know when that's going to hit and I don't know what problems it's going to cause, right? Or what problems I'm going to have to solve. And so I don't plan that far out. I just plan 3 months, right? So for right now, what do I need to be doing for 3 months? Well, in order to fill the coaching, I need to get so many, coaching applications, and I need to get so many people onto calls where I'm helping them out. And I usually try and coach them and then just ask them if they want more. I mean, it's not, I don't do the hard sell thing, you you know whether or not it's going to help you typically. And then it's just down to, how does this fit into the rest of my life and my budget? So, so I can break that down, right? I want to sell so many sponsorships, so I've got to get these projects done, right? So I'm working on my media kit right now. And I've got that, I've actually got it in my planner, to finish that this week, right? And so those are the things that we're looking at as far as planning goes, to get that figured out. So how do we break it down from there, right? And it's the same thing for learning, right? It's like, okay, well, I want to be a team lead. Well, then I need to spend at least part of my learning time learning how to be a team lead, right? So I need to learn leadership, I need to learn communication, I need to learn, right? And so um those are things you can go pick up, right? You can go pick up books, you can go watch seminars, you can go, there's a ton of leadership content out there, right? But maybe also it's, I'm kind of bored doing React these days, right? Or maybe it's still the bee's knees, I mean, whatever, right? So then it's, I want to learn React more deeply, and so I'm going to go watch some of the more advanced React talks at conferences, right? And so that's your weekly learning or daily learning, right? And I'm going to go reach out to um, the speaker and have a conversation with them, right? And I'm going to record it and put it up on YouTube, right? And so you get the idea, right? This is how it all kind of plays together. But you can sit down and you can figure out what approach you want to take for the next quarter, right? I'm going to get this content. I'm going to reach out to these people. I'm going to do this kind of work, and then it's going to start to deliver for you, right? So for me, what I do is the first thing in here. I'm just going to kind of flip through the front of it because it's got a bunch in here. I might hold it up to the camera, but if you're just listening, because most of our people are on audio only, I'm going to try and make this as audio friendly as possible, right? So the first thing that's in here is goals, right? And um, it's got annual goals at the front, right? And so I haven't filled that in yet. I'm working on that now, right? But annual goals, and then the next one is your goal details, right? And so the only one I've put in so far is complete an Ironman this year. You probably already think that I'm crazy, and if I stood up and showed you the big belly I have, you would think I'm even more crazy. But that's a goal, okay? And it has goal details in here, so motivators, next steps, what you're going to do to celebrate when you get there, goal progress, and then it has a streak tracker where you can actually mark off, how many days in a row or how many days out of so many days you've done, right? So it's got a bunch of boxes at the bottom that you can check off, right? So when I'm done recording this, I'm going to go swim, and then I'm going to come home and try not to die of exhaustion. And right, but then I'll mark it off, right? I'll mark off, today's the 19th, so I'll mark off the 19th on month one, right? And then, the other goal details, right? So, and they've got a bunch of these that I can fill in, right? Why do I want to do it? What am I going to do next for it? And stuff like that. And then they've got some calendar pages in here that I don't use. You can put in kind of longer term scheduling stuff. So like if I have something that I need to look at, making sure that I have in here, then that's what I do. Then it has daily rituals. And this is something that I'm working on right now, right? So this is where you could put in your daily learning, right? And the rituals are actually morning, evening, workday startup, and workday shutdown. And I love that, right? So my workday startup could be, I'm gonna learn something new today. And then the workday shutdown could be, I'm gonna commit code, right? And not at work, right? Everybody commits code at work, right? No, it's, I'm gonna commit code to advent of code, right? I'm going to commit code to, uh, whatever, right? To whatever project I'm working on. And at the end of the day, that's just something that you deliver, right? And then the next page is the ideal week. And I love this too. And this is a tool that I've used a lot in the past. In fact, usually what I've done is I've actually put it into a Google Calendar, just called ideal week. And then I just turn on the visibility when I'm planning my next week, right? And so, and I've only filled in Monday in here, and I thought Sunday was Monday. So there's a bunch of stuff scribbled out, but yeah, so I've got some stuff that I do on a regular basis. I'm going to be getting up early and working out. And so, Monday starts at 5 a.m. with a workout. I have carpool at 7 a.m., drive my daughter to school. On on Mondays, I have a stand-up meeting at 9 o'clock that I forgot to write in there. I've got a mastermind call at 10:30. I've got JavaScript Jabber at 11:30, and then I have a team meeting at 5:30 in the evening, right? And so I just do that for every day and make sure that that's all in there. But here's the real kicker: is that at the end of every week, there's a weekly review, and so you just sit down and you see what went well, what didn't go well, how you did on the big 3 goals that you have for the week, right? So my big 3 goals for this week. And so, yeah, just sit down and just figure it out, right? What are your big 3 goals? What are your goals for the quarter? And then what are your goals for the week, right? And so I'm finishing up the resume course today. I promised a few people they would have it, and so I have to finish it. I'm going to have my editor hit it, but I'm going to deliver kind of the raw video, right? I've rehearsed it enough to where I can do it, and it won't be painful to watch. But he can clean it up, and it flows better. So resume course, and then I need to start scheduling the meetups for January, right? So I've got some people who are going to come. Like I just talked to Mishko, right? So probably do quick.io or builder.io for the January JavaScript meetup. I've got some people I can talk to about stuff for the Ruby January meetup. But then also we do the membership calls on Wednesday and Friday, right? And so for those, it's getting somebody to come talk about 401ks and how to maximize that. Have somebody come in and talk about freelancing. I can talk about freelancing, right? Some of these are just going to be me. Make sure that I know when the Q&As are going to be so people can just show up and, hey, I'm stuck in my life. How do I get unstuck, right? And so then we talk about it in the Q&A. And then the book club stuff, right? Make sure that's all scheduled and good to go, right? Bob's already told me he's going to be here. We're doing clean code or clean architecture with Uncle Bob, and he was out of town last week. I think he had a family thing, but he said he's back and he's going to be on Wednesday. So, looking forward to that. And, so just making sure that that's all scheduled. I need to figure out what our next book is and see if I can get the author to show up. Right. So those are all things. Right. And then, the other one's the media kit. And right, because I'm having people ask me about podcast sponsorship, and so I need to be able to show them what we have and what we offer, and then from there we hopefully can close some of these sponsorship deals, and I can get closer to my revenue goal ahead of time. And the thing that really helps is that it pays for all the production and stuff, but it also makes it so that I can spend more time on the podcast and less time trying to figure out how to pay my bills, right? And then it also has like, how did last week's big 3 go? Right. I didn't do so hot on that. I'm still, figuring that out. And then one other thing that has in here is workout, or it says rejuvenation, and how identify 3 ways to eat, sleep, eat, or move, connect, or relax a bit better this week. Right. So one of them is working out, right? So I have a program called TriDot that is giving me workouts for my triathlon training. I need to wake up earlier and go work out, because if I don't do it in the morning, I tend to not do it, right? And then it's got the daily planner, right? So today, the kids are out of school, so I did not have carpool. That was kind of nice. But I've got my 3 things. So one is I have to finish the resume course. The other one is I have to make sure that subscribers have access to the resume course, right? Because somebody emailed me and said they couldn't find it. And then the last thing is that just getting that workout in, right? And so I need to start moving the needle on that now, because if I don't start moving the needle on it now, there's no way I'll complete an Ironman in September. So, and I already have a race picked out. It's Ironman Maryland is the one that I'm aiming at. So anyway, you kind of get the idea. And then I have a team meeting tonight that I have to move because my mom is taking us all bowling for Christmas. So anyway, but yeah, so it's just got a schedule page. It's got a page for notes. You've got your daily big 3, and you just kind of work through it. And so I just sit down at the beginning of the week, plan my week, make sure all the appointments, calls, podcasts, whatever I have going on is in there, and I make sure that I have time in there for my learning and stuff like that, right? Either as part of that startup routine or whatever. But that's how I do it. That's how I plan it all in there. Um, and I'm really liking the full focus planner. It's kind of what I've been looking for a while. And I know I kind of got into the weeds a little bit there, but at a bare minimum, right? If you're going, I don't want to buy a planner. I don't want to, use some system. At least put it in your calendar that when you're going to do all these things, right? When you're going to commit code, write code and commit it, when you're going to um, read or watch a video or whatever you're going to do to learn, make a list of the people you want to connect with and just reach out to one of them every day. That's real fast. Figure out when you're going to make that content, right? It can be a 10-minute, it doesn't have to be an hour long like JavaScript Jabber, right? It can be 10 minutes a week, right? I'm going to talk about whatever I learned for my learning this week, right? Hey, I picked up this library and I wrote code against it every day this week because that's what I do. And this is what I liked and this is what I didn't, right? Good podcast. That's a good podcast, right? People want to make it into this major thing. It doesn't have to be a major thing, right? And then, yeah, what meetup am I going to go to this month, right? Well, I don't see many meetups out there for my thing, right? So I'm going to go find one that either streams theirs online, right, and gives opportunity to mingle, or come to ours, right? And so I'm looking to do that for each of these. Definitely going to do JavaScript one. And the way we're going to do them is because part of the deal with meetups is kind of the interactive opportunity to learn and to whatever from each other, right? So we'll have people come and do some kind of presentation, right? But I also want people to be able to get to know each other, because that was always the big thing for me when I was a new programmer. Was I'd show up to the meetups and I'd get to know people, and it turned out that those were the people that got me my job 2 or 3 years down the line, right? Is people that I got to know now. And so what I'm looking at is I'm going to use a system. I think I'm going to use gather.town. And what it allows is you can set up kind of a space, like an office space, and then people can come in and they can actually um, walk up to other people and have a conversation. If somebody wants to sponsor the meetup, then they'll have a little table where people can go talk to them. But that's kind of the deal. That's basically the way that we're doing it. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at, and that's that. But just schedule it in, right? Go find where you need to be to do that. Go figure out which conference you can make it to, right? Go talk to your boss and see if they'll help cover the cost of going, right? Will you buy the ticket or the airfare or the hotel or all three? And I've had some employers that were really good about that and some that really weren't. But again, just kind of figure that out. That will get you down the road, right? As you're figuring out how to get down the road in your career, the next step and the next step and the next step until eventually you get what you want. So that's how I do my planning. That's how I would do my planning for 2023 is just to summarize. I would think long-term, where do I want to be, right? I want a platform that really helps a ton of people level up their career, move from one bracket to the next, right? Top 50%, 20%, 5%, 1%, elite of the elite. And then, and I want to help people make that movement multiple times. And, so that's kind of where I'm looking long term, right? So a little shorter term, that means we're going to run these kinds of things. We're going to make this kind of content, right? We're going to make this paid and this free, right? And then, shorter term than that is, how do I fill the meetups? How do I fill, right? And so you do this with yours, right? In order for me to become a senior developer, I need to learn React better. So these are the next steps that I'm going to learn. These are the next things I'm going to learn. These are the next steps. This is how I'm going to figure out what to learn, right? So I'm going to go subscribe to newsletters and blogs and podcasts and see what they're talking about, and that may be the next step, right? It's just figuring out where people are talking about what I need to learn next. But at the end of the day, that's the approach, right? So you start at the high level and you work your way down, right? And then from there, just making sure you have those times set aside so that you can sit down and you can take your learning journey to the next level. And that's it. I know I rambled a little bit, but for the most part, that's how I do it, right? And so, yeah, I sit down every quarter for an hour or two and I figure my stuff out, right? And then I just break it down into easy chunks, right? And that way I can do what I need to do. Now, we added a section to the podcast, and this is the self promo section. And I've mentioned some of the stuff that we're working on. Mostly, I guess the things that I want to shout out about are the book club. Like I said, Uncle Bob will be there on Wednesday. This goes out in a couple weeks, though. He'll probably still be coming. He's been coming to him. He's pretty excited about it, actually. Topendevs.com/book club. We are really ramping up hard on the membership. And so you can get that at topendevs.com/sign up, sign_up. And then, we have Top End Dev Summit. And that's going to be about a lot of the soft skills and career growth and how to learn and how to pick up tools and stuff like that. That's going to be at the end of January. And just go to topenddevs.com and click conferences. You'll find it. But yeah, those are kind of the things. And then if you click on meetups, it'll show you all the meetups. But yeah, that's what I've got there. As far as picks go, I've been picking, I think last week I picked Antidote. I don't know if I picked this yet, so I'm going to pick it. But there's a company that does kind of like escape room puzzle games. And we've been doing an advent calendar one. And the one we're doing is from 2021, I think. It's from last year, and it's The Mystery of the Ice Cave, 2020. Oh. Anyway, so what it is it's relatively simple. But what you do is you pop open a door and you pull the stuff out. It has like cards and stuff in it. And you take the cards and you read them, right? You read the story and then you open the door and then you use the stuff to solve the puzzle. And then the puzzle will give you 3 numbers. And the 3 numbers go into basically this combination lock that you wind up cutting out, right? And it has 3 sliders in it with the numbers. And so you slide it into the numbers and then you flip it over. And when you flip it over, it has 3 arrows. And so you move in the directions of the arrows, right? So you might go up and to the right and then down, right? Or I think one of them was up and to the right, over to the left, and then down to the right or something like that, right? And so you wound up with the door that was right next to the one you were just, Anyway, so and then you can double check your work because each door has 3 shapes on it, and those 3 shapes show up underneath the arrows. And so if it all lines up, then you got the right one. And so that's when you do the next day. And it's been pretty fun. The kids really love it. Everybody has to take a turn, looking through the door, seeing what's in there and stuff like that. But it's been fun. So I'm going to pick that. Board Game Geek weights it at 2.08. And yeah, it's been fun. We've enjoyed that. So I'm going to pick that. I just watched the World Cup final. That gives you an idea of what I watched it yesterday afternoon on a replay. And I was a little disappointed that France didn't win, but it was a terrific game. Once France kind of woke up and started playing, it was fun. It was a really fun game to watch. And it came down to penalties and yeah, good stuff. Anyway, so I'm going to pick that. And then a lot of people are moving off of Twitter, or they're kind of dual posting to Mastodon. And so we set up a Mastodon instance. It's at topenddevs.social. You're welcome to join our server. You can go join one of the others. I'm on Mastodon at chuck@topenddevs.social. And yeah, really, really enjoying that. And then I've been playing this game off and on my phone. It's called Disney Mirrorverse. And it's basically you have different characters with different abilities and you go and you battle. And it's fun, and it's fun to kind of see the different takes on the Disney characters that came through the Mirrorverse, right? So they're a little bit different from what you're used to, but it's fun, and I've enjoyed that. So I'm gonna pick that as well. And yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to watch Yellowstone season 5. I haven't been able to see it on Paramount Plus or Peacock. And so I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but yeah. And then I'm really looking forward to 1923. with Harrison Ford, and I think it has Helen Mirren in it. Anyway, it looks really good too. So I have to say that 1883, I liked it better than Yellowstone. So, but I've been a Tim McGraw fan forever since he was doing country music. So anyway, shout all those things out. We do also have JavaScript remote conference coming up in March. So keep an eye out for that. And I guess I'll wrap it up there. Until next time, folks, Max out.